So last week, I actually sold my A7S III to go ahead and buy the Sony FX3. I was on the fence about buying this camera for a while due to the recent rumors of a potentially FX3 Mark II, but I decided to go ahead and just pick up the FX3. And the main reason I did so is, well, we'll get to that. That being said, I'm going to be covering 10 reasons why you should probably pick up this camera, revealing why I literally bought this camera last week. And on the flip side, if you stick around to the end of the video, I'm also going to go over why you probably shouldn't buy this camera as well, ultimately allowing you to make the ultimate best decision for yourself moving into the new year. So reason number one is going to be the recording specs of this camera. It shoots 4K uncropped and it only crops in at 10% at 4K 120 frames per second. And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, a lot of these cameras actually crop in on the sensor when you shoot on higher file formats. So having a camera that doesn't do that is just a huge plus, especially in 4K. Next, you can shoot this camera at 422 10 bits. You have the regular Sony S-Log profiles, and another plus is you can actually shoot external RAW on this camera if you connect it to something like an Atmos Ninja. Reason number two is going to be low light performance. Guys, this sensor is actually a 12 megapixel sensor, and it is also a full frame sensor. In addition, it has a dual native ISO going all the way up to 12,800 as a native ISO. And without getting into any more of the nerdy talk, guys, this camera performs exceptionally well in low light, especially if you set this thing up with a low aperture lens. You guys are going to be able to get that creamy, beautiful looking low light footage with little to no grain. Reason number three is going to be the overall image quality of the FX3. Guys, they have literally shot Hollywood movies, specifically the creator, with the Sony FX3. And honestly, I just love the image that comes out of this camera. I was already very happy with the image on the A7S III, and yes, they pretty much have the same sensor and a lot of the same specs. So of course the image quality is not going to be that much better on the FX3 compared to the A7S III, but later on in the video, I'll explain the main differences. Reason number four is going to be the full frame sensor. Guys, a lot of my lenses are made for full frame sensors, and I've done a lot of videos on the channel explaining that a APS-C crop sensor or a Super 35 sensor is not necessarily a bad thing, but there are a lot of pluses that do come shooting with a full frame sensor. One of which is going to be, of course, the low light capabilities, and another is actually taking advantage of the aperture that is going to be on your lens. For example, if I put a 24-70 G Master 2.8 on a full frame sensor, I get the full 2.8 in terms of depth of field and that blurry bokeh in the background, because I'm taking advantage of the entire frame. When I'm shooting it on something like an APS-C sensor, it's actually going to crop in at 1.5x, which means I'm not going to get the full advantage of that bokeh. So again, that's just another plus for the camera. Moving into reason number five, it's going to be the top handle and audio capabilities of the FX3. So if you guys didn't know, the FX3 comes with a top handle that allows you to plug in XLR microphones with phantom power, which is going to come in handy, especially for interviews and corporate style videos where audio plays an important role in the overall video. And unlike the FX6, the FX3 also has just a regular microphone jack on the side, so you're actually going to get both options, which for me is a huge plus because there are instances where I don't want to plug in XLR microphones. I want to just plug in regular Rode lav mics, so having the option to do both is a huge plus for me. Next is going to be the photography capabilities of this camera. So guys, this is not a photography camera, but it does have the ability to take decent photos and shoot them, of course, in RAW. Although they're only 12 megapixels, I actually took lots of photos on my A7S III when I didn't necessarily have my A7R5 on board, and the photos turned out pretty good, especially for using those photos for social media or online purposes. So knowing that you're buying a video camera that also does have the potential to take some raw photos on the go it's just another plus for me. So reason number 7 is going to be the size and just the portability of this camera. Guys, I have an FX6 and I've had a lot of cameras in the past that were just extremely big. And the farther I take my video production career, I'm leaning more and more towards more portable cameras and setups because big is not necessarily always better. At the end of the day, I just want to get a job done, and the less things that I need to worry about, knowing that the FX3 pretty much has everything that I need in a small body format, just makes my life a whole lot easier. So moving into reason 8, let's talk about the build quality of this camera. So guys, the build quality is absolutely exceptional. I had the A7S III for 4 years and I used that thing almost every other day professionally, and of course to record a lot of the YouTube videos that I already have on my channel. And that's no different with the FX3. I absolutely love the build quality of this thing. It feels confident, it feels heavy, and I feel like I can use this thing over the next 5 years with no issues of this thing falling apart, you know, traveling with it, taking it into shoots where there might be sand, taking it into shoots where there might be some harsh environments. The thing is just built very well. The next reason I really like this camera is going to be the IBIS, the in-body stabilization, which of course they also did have this on the A7S III, but it's just a point to kind of throw out there. Things like the Blackmagic Pocket 6K, which I would argue is a pretty good competitor of the FX3, it doesn't have in-body stabilization. So being able to take that along with autofocus with the FX3 is a huge plus for me, especially shooting a lot of interview style videos and shooting things where I need to have autofocus and in-body stabilization. And the final reason you guys should probably buy the FX3, and also the main reason that I switched from the A7S III to the FX3, is going to be the body of the camera. So guys, this thing is really set up for cinema. I actually bought the FX30 a couple weeks ago, and that's what sold me on buying the FX3, because they have almost an identical body. They have something called tally lights, which allow you to see if you're recording on the front, top, or back. They have multiple mounting points for you to be able to mount on various items on the side, on the top, on the bottom, and they just have a overall elegant style and look that I just absolutely love. It ties in very well, again, with the FX30 and my FX6, all being a part of Sony's cinema line. I just love the aesthetics and the look of this camera. So now that we've covered the 10 reasons you guys should go ahead and pick up the Sony FX3 this year, let's cover a few points on why you probably don't want to buy this camera. I'm going to give you my final conclusion, and it's probably not going to be what you think. So the first reason you shouldn't buy it is going to be the high price point. Guys, this camera comes in at a whopping $3,700 USD. And with taxes and everything, you're spending almost $4,000 just for the body. Reason number 2 is going to be that it's not made for photography. So although I mentioned you can take pictures earlier in the video, guys, this camera really isn't made for photography. So if you really do want to get a camera that is going to allow you to not only get great video, but also have some higher capabilities in the photography section, this camera just might not be for you. Number 3 is going to be the FX30. Yes, guys, the FX30 is pretty much identical to the FX3, only that it is not going to be a full frame sensor. It's going to be an APS-C sensor. And I think it's a great alternative to an FX3, especially if you guys don't want to drop $7,000, $8,000, or even $9,000 buying the FX3 and all the attachments and lenses that you need to get it up and running. If you guys want to learn more about the FX30, I have another video very similar to this one on the FX30. I'll put that in the description. Reason number 4 is going to be the age of the FX3. As the FX3 is pretty much 4 years old, and a lot of people are speculating a release on the FX3 Mark II. So that's just something to keep an eye out for when purchasing this camera at the full price point. And the 5th reason you probably don't want to buy this camera is because there's so many other great options on the market. So that all being said, should you guys buy the Sony FX3 moving into the new year? Well, it's complicated. I think that there's a lot of different factors that you really need to take into consideration when buying a new camera. You need to figure out, what are you going to be using the camera for? Are you okay with buying a camera that might have a new version come out in the next few years? Do you want to spend the type of money that you're going to be spending on the FX3? And ultimately, for $4,000, is the FX3 the best camera on the market for you today? Well, those are questions you need to ask yourself. For me, they definitely were, especially since I already have the FX6 and the FX30. So all of them really go hand in hand together. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm in the Sony ecosystem, so it just made a lot of sense. So guys, let me know if you guys are gonna pick up this camera this year, and if not, what cameras are better than the FX3, or what are other suggestions that you can give to your fellow community. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe for more camera tips. And as always, guys, peace out.